All right, so we've been diving deep into self-esteem lately. You guys are really sent in a lot of material for this deep dive.
Yeah, it seems like everyone's interested in this topic.
Definitely seems that way. And we've got excerpts from a bunch of different courses all about self-esteem.
Yeah, all trying to teach people about it and give them ways to actually improve it.
Right. So today we're going to try to get to the heart of it all. Pull out the most important insights from all these courses.
That's it. We'll see what these courses really have to say about self-esteem.
Exactly. So rather than getting lost in the weeds, let's start with the big picture. What is self-esteem at its core?
Well, one of the courses, of course, Self-Esteem 2.PDS, defines it pretty simply. Self-esteem is basically the value you place on yourself.
Like how much you think you're worth.
Exactly. It's how you judge yourself, your overall opinion of yourself.
So it's not just about feeling good or confident or anything. It's more about the underlying beliefs you have about yourself.
Right. It's deeper than that. It affects how you think, how you feel, how you act, even how you relate to other people.
Wow. So it really does touch every aspect of life.
Yeah. Of course, Self-Esteem 1.PDF actually talks about that, how pervasive self-esteem is. It influences practically everything.
That makes sense. If you're constantly putting yourself down, it's going to affect how you approach everything.
Absolutely. So before we get into all the ways self-esteem impacts us, I'm curious about something. What are some of the assumptions people make about self-esteem? I feel like I've heard a lot of myths and misconceptions over the years.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Some people think that if you're smart or attractive, you automatically have high self-esteem.
Right. And of course, Self-Esteem 1.PDF actually debunks that myth. They make it clear that intelligence and attractiveness don't automatically equal high self-esteem.
So you could be incredibly talented or good-looking and still struggle with self-doubt.
Exactly. It's more about your inner beliefs than your external qualities. Think about it. Two people could achieve the same amazing thing,
Right. But one person might feel proud of themselves.
while the other person might feel like it wasn't good enough or focus on their mistakes.
So it's not about the achievement itself. It's about how we interpret it, how we see ourselves in relation to it.
That's a great way to put it. And that brings us to another important point that, of course, Self-Esteem 1.PDF makes. Self-esteem isn't fixed. It's not set in stone. It can change over time.
So people with low self-esteem aren't just stuck that way forever.
Nope. It's something you can work on and improve. It's malleable.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this whole conversation so valuable. You have the power to shift those beliefs and build a stronger sense of self-worth.
That's encouraging to hear. Okay, so we've laid some groundwork. We know self-esteem is about how much we value ourselves. It impacts everything we do, and thankfully it's not permanent. But let's talk about the consequences. What happens when someone has really low self-esteem? And on the flip side, what are the benefits of having high self-esteem? What does all of this look like in the real world?
Yeah, it's one thing to understand what self-esteem is, but it's a whole other thing to see how it plays out in our lives. And these courses do a great job of illustrating those differences.
From what I've read, low self-esteem can be incredibly damaging. Of course, Self-Esteem 1.PDF links it to all sorts of problems: anxiety, depression, relationship issues, even substance abuse.
It's true. And that it can show up in these subtle ways that you might not even realize are connected to self-esteem, like constantly comparing yourself to others.
Oh, yeah. Always feeling like you're not good enough, not as successful or attractive or whatever it is.
Right. Or having trouble saying no, taking on too much because you don't think you deserve to set boundaries.
Those are all classic signs of low self-worth, almost like the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Low self-esteem can lead to behaviors that just reinforce that negative self-image.
Yeah.
And then the cycle continues.
And it's not just internal. Of course, Self-Esteem 3.PDF talks about how low self-esteem can actually affect your health choices and how you respond to societal expectations.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
If you don't value yourself, you might neglect your health or make choices that align with negative stereotypes.
Further reinforcing those feelings of unworthiness. It's like this tangled web of internal beliefs and external pressures.
Exactly. So it's not just this internal struggle.
Yeah.
It plays out in our interactions with the world around us.
Okay, so we've got a pretty clear picture of the downsides of low self-esteem. But what about the other side of the coin? What does it look like when someone has healthy self-esteem? What kind of positive ripple effects does that create?
Of course, Self-Esteem 4.PDF really highlights the benefits. And it's pretty amazing. They talk about increased resilience. So when someone with high self-esteem faces a setback,
They're more likely to bounce back.
exactly, they see it as a learning opportunity and keep moving forward. They don't let it crush them.
Makes sense. If you believe in yourself, you're not as easily defeated by challenges.
Right. And it goes beyond just resilience. The course also mentions higher goal achievement, stronger relationships, and a deeper sense of fulfillment overall.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So when you value yourself, You set healthy boundaries, you go after your dreams, and you attract people who treat you well.
It's like this upward spiral. High self-esteem leads to positive experiences, which then further boost your self-esteem. And it all starts with that fundamental belief in yourself, valuing your worth and treating yourself with kindness.
So it's not just about feeling good, it's about creating a foundation for a happier and more empowered life.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got low self-esteem with its potential pitfalls and high self-esteem with its rewards. But is it really that black and white? Is everyone just one or the other, or is there more nuance to this whole thing?
That's a great question. And that's where these courses start to get really interesting. Course Self-Esteem 2.PDS introduces this concept of proportionality when it comes to self-esteem.
Proportionality. What does that mean?
So it's not just about whether your self-esteem is high or low. It's about whether it's realistic, given your abilities and accomplishments. They use this example of two executives, Steve and Dave. Both have high self-esteem. But the basis for that self-esteem is completely different.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about Steve and Dave.
So Steve's self-esteem is based on genuine hard work and accomplishments. He's confident, but not arrogant. He knows his strengths, but he also acknowledges his weaknesses.
So his self-esteem is grounded in reality. It's earned.
Exactly. But Dave, on the other hand, he has this inflated sense of self. It's not rooted in reality. He feels entitled and superior. And that actually ends up hurting him in the long run. His relationships suffer. His career takes a hit.
Wow. So it's possible to have high self-esteem that's actually unhealthy.
It is. And the course even touches on how this can be a sign of narcissism.
Yeah.
It's not true self-esteem. It's more like a mask to cover up deeper insecurities.
So it's not just about having high self-esteem, it's about where that self-esteem comes from, whether it's based on a genuine assessment of yourself or whether it's more about ego and a need for external validation.
Right. Course Self-Esteem 2.PDF really encourages you to examine the foundation of your self-esteem to make sure it's built on something solid.
That's a great point. I never thought about it that way. So it's not just high or low, it's about whether your self-esteem is authentic and whether it's in proportion to who you are and what you've achieved.
You got it.
It's fascinating. This is making me think about everything in a new light.
I know, right?
Yeah,
It really challenges those oversimplified ideas about self-esteem.
it does. So we've got this whole spectrum of self-esteem from low to high, and then this idea of proportionality. But now I'm wondering, can someone have self-esteem that's too low, like even lower than it should be?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about the person who constantly downplays their achievements. They always focus on their flaws. They never feel good enough, even when they're objectively successful.
Like they're undervaluing themselves.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And this is where self-compassion comes in, recognizing your inherent worth,
Hmm.
regardless of your flaws or perceived shortcomings.
So even if they're achieving great things, their self-esteem doesn't reflect that.
Right. And this can lead to perfectionism, crippling anxiety, a constant feeling of inadequacy. It's like they're holding themselves back from truly experiencing their accomplishments and feeling good about themselves.
It's like they're sabotaging their own happiness.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
And that's something we can explore further when we talk about the strategies for boosting self-esteem, because those negative thought patterns are something you can learn to overcome.
Okay, I'm definitely interested in hearing more about that. We've covered so much already, but it feels like we're just scratching the surface.
I know, me too. There's so much more to unpack. But I think this is a great foundation for our deep dive into self-esteem.
Yeah.
We've got a solid understanding of what it is, how it impacts us, and the importance of that concept of proportionality.
I agree. This is giving me a lot to think about already.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to dive into those strategies for actually improving our self-esteem, because that's where the real transformation happens.
I'm ready. Let's get practical. What can we actually do to start building a healthier and more resilient sense of self-worth?
That's what we'll be talking about next. Stay tuned.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of self-esteem and how it can really impact our lives. But I'm ready to get practical. What can we actually do to boost our self-esteem? What specific advice do these courses offer?
That's where it gets really exciting, because these courses are full of actionable tips and strategies. And the best part is you don't have to overhaul your entire life. Start with something that resonates with you, something you can realistically implement.
I love that. It's about making small, sustainable changes that can have a big impact over time. So what are some of those small changes? Where do we even begin?
Of course, Self-Esteem 4.PDF suggests a powerful exercise called rewriting the narrative. It's about becoming aware of that negative self-talk. We all have those thoughts that tell us we're not good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough, and consciously choosing to replace them with more positive and affirming statements.
So instead of dwelling on those I'm going to fail thoughts, we actively challenge them and reframe them in a more empowering way.
Exactly. Think about it. If you had a friend who constantly put themselves down, you wouldn't just sit there and agree with them, right? You'd offer words of encouragement and remind them of their strengths. Rewriting the narrative is about doing that for yourself.
It's about being your own best friend, your own cheerleader. I love that. But what if those negative thoughts feel really ingrained? What if it's hard to believe those positive statements at first?
That's totally normal. It takes time and practice to shift those deep-seated beliefs. One technique course Self-Esteem 4.pdf recommends is to start small. Instead of trying to convince yourself that you're amazing at everything, focus on acknowledging specific achievements or qualities you're proud of. Did you complete a challenging task at work? Did you stick to your workout routine? Celebrate those wins no matter how small they may seem.
It's about focusing on those small victories and building momentum from there. So it's like building self-esteem one positive thought, one small achievement at a time. I like that approach.
Exactly. And another great strategy that complements rewriting the narrative is channeling your strengths. Instead of dwelling on what you perceive as your weaknesses, focus on what you're naturally good at. What do you enjoy doing? What comes easily to you? Make a list of your strengths and talents and find ways to incorporate them into your daily life.
It's about playing to your strengths rather than constantly trying to fix your weaknesses.
Oh.
That makes a lot of sense. What other strategies stood out to you as being particularly helpful?
Well, one that came up repeatedly, and I think it's often overlooked, is the importance of self-care. Of course, Self-Esteem 4.pdf really emphasizes that taking care of your physical and mental health is a powerful act of self-love. It sends a message to yourself that you are worthy of care and attention.
I know we hear the term self-care a lot these days, but it can feel a bit vague. What does it actually look like in the context of boosting self-esteem?
It's about making conscious choices that nourish your mind, body, and spirit. It could be as simple as getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, or taking a walk in nature. It could also involve setting boundaries with people who drain your energy, or saying no to commitments that overwhelm you.
It's about prioritizing your well-being and honoring your needs. And that can be especially challenging if you struggle with low self-esteem. It's like you're not used to putting yourself first.
You're right. It can feel selfish at first, but it's actually the opposite. Core Self-Esteem 5.pdf uses a powerful analogy, the airplane oxygen mask. You have to put on your own mask first before you can help others. Otherwise, you'll both be in danger. It's a reminder that you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's such a vivid image. It really drives home the point that taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's essential for being able to show up for others.
Exactly. And it's not just about meeting your basic needs. Core Self-Esteem 5.pdf also introduces Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is this fascinating framework that shows how self-care extends beyond the basics to encompass love, belonging, esteem, and self-actualization.
So it's about nurturing yourself on multiple levels: physical, emotional, psychological, even spiritual.
Yes, it's recognizing that true self-care involves attending to all aspects of your being. And when it comes to spiritual needs, the Course acknowledges that religion can be a source of comfort and connection for many people. But it also emphasizes that there are many other paths to spiritual fulfillment, whether it's through nature art meditation or finding your own unique way to tap into a sense of purpose and meaning.
It's about finding those practices that help you feel connected to something greater than yourself, whether it's a higher power, nature, or simply a sense of wonder and awe.
Exactly. And the key is to experiment and find what resonates with you. Now, in addition to these core strategies, Course Self-Esteem 4.pdf actually provides this incredible resource, a list of 26 additional tips for boosting self-esteem. It's everything from practical advice like getting organized and managing your social media to more internal work like silencing your inner critic and practicing self-forgiveness.
Wow, 26. That's amazing. I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, though. Where do you even begin with so many options?
Don't worry, it's not about doing it all at once. The beauty of having so many options is that you can choose the ones that resonate most with you. Start with something that feels doable, something that excites you. Maybe it's trying a new hobby, volunteering for a cause you care about, or simply practicing gratitude each day.
It's about creating your own personalized self-esteem toolkit filled with the strategies that work best for you.
Exactly. And it's a journey, not a destination. You're constantly learning, growing, and adapting. So be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and remember that even small steps can lead to big transformations.
That's encouraging. Now, one of the things that really struck me in Core Self-Esteem 1.pdf was the discussion of self-sabotage. It's this fascinating paradox. Why would we intentionally do things that are bad for us? How does our self-esteem play into those self-sabotaging behaviors?
That's a great question. And it gets to the heart of how deeply our beliefs about ourselves can influence our actions, even in ways we're not fully aware of. The Course suggests that self-sabotage often stems from a lack of self-worth. When we don't believe we deserve success, happiness, or love, we might unconsciously engage in behaviors that confirm those negative beliefs. It's like we're fulfilling our own prophecy of failure.
So if deep down you believe you're not worthy of a loving relationship, you might subconsciously push people away or sabotage your chances of finding that connection.
Yes, or you might procrastinate on that important project at work because you're afraid of succeeding, afraid of proving those negative beliefs wrong. It's a complex issue, and it can be difficult to unravel those deep-seated patterns.
But Course Self-Esteem 3.pdf takes this a step further, linking self-sabotage not just to our internal beliefs, but also to the messages we receive from society. It's like this web of internal and external influences that can lead us down a path of self-destruction.
That's such an important point. If we grow up in an environment where we're constantly told we're not good enough, smart enough, or pretty enough, those messages can become internalized and shape our beliefs about ourselves. Then we might unconsciously make choices that conform to those negative expectations, even if they're ultimately harmful to us.
So it's not just about our own limiting beliefs, it's also about recognizing those external messages and consciously choosing to challenge them.
Exactly. It's about becoming aware of how those societal expectations might be influencing your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And it's about giving yourself permission to question those messages and create your own definition of success, happiness, and worthiness.
That's so empowering. But how do we actually start to untangle that web of internal and external influences? How do we break free from those self-sabotaging patterns?
Well, one of the most powerful tools I've come across in these courses is the concept of self-parenting. It's about recognizing that we all have an inner child who carries our fears, hopes, and emotional baggage from our past. And we also have an inner grown-up who can provide guidance, support, and compassion to that inner child.
So instead of criticizing our inner child for their mistakes or insecurities, we can offer understanding and encouragement. We can be that loving and supportive parent we may not have had growing up.
Exactly. It's about learning to soothe our inner critics, offer ourselves forgiveness, and cultivate a more loving and accepting internal dialogue.
It's about tapping into that wiser, more nurturing part of ourselves and extending that same compassion to our inner child. I can see how that would be incredibly healing, especially for people who may not have had the most supportive or nurturing upbringing. It's like giving yourself the love and acceptance you may have missed out on.
You're absolutely right. Self-parenting can be a powerful way to reparent ourselves, heal old wounds, and create a more secure sense of self. And another key strategy that's often paired with self-parenting is learning to silence that inner critic. That voice that's always telling us we're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough. It can be so loud and relentless, especially when we're trying to make positive changes.
Oh, we all know that voice.
Yeah.
It can be so discouraging and debilitating.
Yeah.
How do we start to quiet it down? How do we stop listening to that constant negativity?
Well, of course, Self-Esteem 4.pdf encourages us to question those negative thoughts.
Yeah.
Instead of just accepting them as truth, we can ask ourselves, what evidence is there to support this thought? Is this thought actually helpful, or is it just making me feel worse? What would I say to a friend who was having this thought?
It's about recognizing that those negative thoughts are often distorted and don't reflect reality. It's about challenging them and choosing to focus on more empowering beliefs.
Exactly. And another thought pattern that can really undermine our self-esteem is comparing ourselves to others. Course Self-Esteem 4.pdf reminds us that those comparisons are often based on superficial factors like appearance social media posts or material possessions, and don't tell the whole story.
It's so easy to get caught in that comparison trap, especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with curated images of perfection. It's like everyone else is living these amazing lives and we're just stuck in our own messy reality.
It is. But focusing on other people's lives only distracts us from our own journey and undermines our self-worth. Instead, the courses encourage us to focus on our own progress, celebrate our unique strengths, and recognize that everyone is on their own path. We're all at different stages with different challenges and triumphs.
It's about shifting our focus inward and embracing our own individuality rather than constantly trying to measure up to some external standard of success or happiness. Now, one thing that surprised me in Course Self-Esteem 3.pdf was the idea that self-esteem tends to increase as we age. Do we really get better at liking ourselves as we get older?
It's not quite that simple. There can definitely be dips and plateaus along the way, and everyone's experience is unique. But the Course suggests that as we mature, we often gain a deeper understanding of ourselves. We have more life experiences to draw from. We've learned from our mistakes, and we're better equipped to handle challenges. All of that can contribute to a more stable and resilient sense of self.
So it's not necessarily that we like ourselves more, but we might have a more solid foundation for that self-acceptance. We've had more time to figure out who we are and what matters to us. But the course did mention that self-esteem can be particularly vulnerable later in life. What are some of the challenges that can impact our self-esteem as we age?
Well, as we get older, we might face difficult transitions like health issues, loss of loved ones, or changes in our social roles. These transitions can shake our sense of identity and lead to feelings of insecurity or inadequacy. It's like we have to redefine who we are in the face of these life changes, which can be unsettling and challenging for our self-esteem.
So it's important to be mindful of these potential vulnerabilities and proactively nurture our self-esteem as we navigate these later stages of life.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that self-esteem is a lifelong journey, not a destination. It requires ongoing attention and care, especially during times of transition or challenge.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the importance of self-care, challenging negative thoughts, and cultivating a more compassionate inner dialogue. But there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to make sure we address. Course Self-Esteem 2.pdf talks about the distinction between self-esteem and self-worth. We've been using these terms somewhat interchangeably, but are they actually different?
That's a great question, and it's an important distinction to make. The Course explains that self-esteem is about how you judge yourself. It's your overall opinion based on your perceived accomplishments, abilities, and how you measure up to others. Self-worth, on the other hand, is about recognizing your inherent value as a human being, regardless of your achievements or flaws. It's about knowing that you are worthy of love and respect simply because you exist.
So you could be really successful and accomplished, have high self-esteem, but still struggle with feeling worthy deep down.
Exactly. And that disconnect can create a lot of inner conflict. You might achieve great things but still feel like you're not good enough, or you might constantly seek validation from others to feel worthy. The Course emphasizes that both self-esteem and self-worth are essential for a healthy sense of self. They work together to create a solid foundation for a fulfilling and meaningful life.
So how do we cultivate self-worth? Is it something we're born with, or can it be developed?
Of course, Self-Esteem 2.pdf suggests that our early childhood experiences and the messages we receive from our caregivers play a significant role in shaping our sense of self-worth. But it's also something we can cultivate and strengthen throughout our lives. It's an ongoing process of recognizing our inherent value and choosing to believe in ourselves regardless of external circumstances.
So even if someone's had a rough start in life, it's not too late to build that strong sense of self-worth and self-esteem.
Not at all. It's never too late to start changing those beliefs. And it all starts with that internal shift, recognizing your inherent worth isn't tied to things like your looks, achievements, or what other people think.
It's like saying, hey, I'm valuable just because I am, not because I did this or achieved that.
Exactly. And from that foundation of self-worth, you can build a more resilient self-esteem. It's like building a house on solid ground instead of shaky sand. When your sense of self comes from within, it's less likely to crumble when life throws challenges your way.
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of challenges, it really struck me in Course Self-Esteem 3.pdf how they connect self-esteem to our overall well-being. It's not just some abstract concept. It affects everything, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Self-esteem impacts how we show up in our relationships, our work, our health, even our spirituality. It influences the choices we make, the boundaries we set, and how we navigate the world around us. It's the foundation for a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Of course, Self-Esteem 3.pdf had this quote that really hit home for me. You only have yourself.
That's such a powerful statement, isn't it? And the Course goes on to say that no matter what happens in life, relationships change, careers evolve, we get older, you always have yourself. That's why nurturing that relationship with yourself, building that strong sense of self-esteem and self-worth is so important. It's the most fundamental relationship you'll ever have.
And they emphasize that taking care of that relationship means treating yourself with the same kindness and respect you'd give to a close friend. It's about being your own biggest supporter, your own source of comfort and strength.
It's about recognizing that you deserve that same level of care and understanding that you so easily offer to others. We often extend so much more grace to other people than we do to ourselves.
It's true. We can be so hard on ourselves. So much of what we've discussed today is about turning that compassion inward.
Exactly. And ultimately, building self-esteem is an act of self-love. It's about choosing to see your worth, choosing to believe in yourself, not because someone else told you to, but because you know in your heart it's true.
You know, we've covered so much ground today. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface. But if there's one thing I want you to take away from this deep dive, it's this. Your self-esteem is worth investing in. It's worth the time and effort because it will pay dividends in every area of your life.
And as one of the courses, Course Self-Esteem 2.pdf puts it, you are worthy of happiness and fulfillment, and you have the power to shape how you feel about yourself. It's a reminder that you are not a victim of your circumstances. You have the ability to choose how you see yourself and how you show up in the world.
That's such an empowering message. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. What's one small step you can take today to nurture your self-esteem? Remember that list of 26 strategies we mentioned. Pick one that speaks to you, something you can do right now. Maybe it's writing down 3 things you're grateful for or complimenting yourself on a job well done. It doesn't have to be huge, just a small gesture of kindness toward yourself.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. Be patient with yourself, celebrate the small wins, and never give up on believing in your own worthiness. You're capable of incredible things, and you deserve to feel good about who you are.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Remember, you are your own best friend. Treat yourself accordingly. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep believing in yourself.